All right, I'm going to jump into this, and I would say hold on to your seats because I've got a lot of slides. I probably got a little too excited by this topic, but I really wanted to share this with you. And I'll reiterate what I'm really hoping to, the argument I'm hoping to make here is that real estate is a profession, and real estate has many histories. There's not the history of real estate, right? History is a complex, kind of multi-layered thing. Globally, there's lots of cultural differences. There are starts and stops. But being aware of the history of the domain that you want to practice in, I think is very, very important, especially if you want to be successful. Now, if you don't want to be successful, you probably don't need to worry too much about what is coming before. This could be on the level of a community project where you come in, you have all these ideas about like what would be great, but if you don't understand what has been happening in that community, uh, you're going to be kind of, it's going to be hard. So what this presentation is going to be what I call a kind of a lightning round of a history. Keep in mind, there's, like I said, there's many different ones that we just don't have the time to get into. And so this is a overview of a certain trajectory of history that I believe is going to give some interesting insights into those three pieces I was talking about before. The financial and the ownership aspects of real estate, the policy aspects, and the technology and the technical aspects. So I wanted to start, and we're going a little bit way back here. And being an English major from college, I always like to start with books. This is from the Iliad, and this is a very early mention of property in these kind of historical Greek texts. And I'll just read it really quickly where it says, "But as two men with measuring rods in hand contend about the landmark stones in a common field, and in a narrow space contend each for his equal share, so did the battlements hold these foes apart." Just ruminate on it. We don't have time to unpack all this, but just kind of keep in mind the dynamic of these private parties. There's kind of a government piece here. There's a measuring. There's a technical piece here. But what are these landmark stones? So,
sorry, just for an international student, do you mind translating that into for an international student? You just mind translating that into so I understand the meaning of the sentence.
yes. So which part are you kind of?
The last part.
The battlements hold these foes apart. So the battlements are kind of physical structures, walls or something like that, and foes would be kind of two people who are in contention. They're kind of fighting over something. Yeah, and property is always something that has like I said, a rich history of contention in the past, which we'll dig into a little bit. Is that helpful? Good. So the landmark stones, what are these landmark stones? I don't know if we have any Greek. Do we have anyone from Greece? Or anyone who studied Greek? I feel somewhat good that I'm telling you things you may not know. I never thought it's interesting to come into a room and be told things that, are kind of self-evident. This is what the stone they're referring to. So in the 6th century BC in Greece, property was recorded on these stones. So the owner of the property's name was inscribed into it. They were set about locations we know. They exist. This is in the Agora in Athens, and the red arrows indicate where these stones you can still go and take a look at them. And why they were important was because those stones were used to inscribe mortgages into. So, the Greeks created one of the earliest mortgage markets and credit markets that was underpinned by real estate. And this word is the hypotheca, which was created then. And even in France today, for some people who may speak French or be familiar with French, the hypothèque in France is a mortgage, right? And this is kind of where it comes from. So this system of recording property and recording mortgages and the creation of this credit market of lenders and borrowers all tied to real estate was functioning. until it wasn't. And just like, in 2008, 2009, we had this global real estate kind of triggered financial crisis. They had one in ancient Greece. So Solon, who was the archon of Athens, the kind of leader at the time, famously took all these Horos stones and pulled them up, knocked them over, and essentially kind of reset the real estate market. So again, just as the more things change, the more they stay the same, right? These are dynamics that have existed throughout history. Rome also used boundary stones, Kippy and Terminus, and they adopted the hypotheca from the Greeks because they were very interested in what was going on over there. And here's a quote from a book by Ovid in around the turn of the millennium. It says, "Neighbors, gather sincerely and hold a feast and sing your praises, sacred Terminus. You set bounds to peoples, cities, great kingdoms. Without you, every field would be disputed." Who was Terminus? Terminus was actually an early Roman god, and he was the god of property and boundaries. And they worshipped him, and they worshipped him feverishly, which may tell you something about why Rome feels so strongly about their city. This is a depiction, kind of anthropomorphized version of the stone and the god all in one. And here's an example of these kippus that are found throughout Rome, delineating the public areas and the private areas. And so the Romans were very, very interested in how to organize and rationalize their property to about 2 centuries into from that quote that I mentioned. In about 200, you have Emperor Severus commissioning the first comprehensive map of ancient Rome to be carved into marble, so-called now the Severan plan, and it was a 1 to 240 perfect scale of the whole city, which registered all the properties, and then there were corresponding bronze plaques, so they know who had everything, where it was, and this was, never done before like this, and that lasted. Hanging on the wall of the Temple of Peace in the Forum for about 200 years until the collapse of Rome and the plan was taken down and destroyed. So this is another footnote, which is these systems, are created to do what they do, and we kind of anticipate that they will last forever. But if we look at history, they don't always. So move out of the ancient time and into the medieval. You have another big, I'm kind of focusing on these big moves, I would say. And the Norman conquest of England, which happened around, in 1066, this is a tapestry of the so-called Bayeux tapestry, which is in the Musée de la Tapisserie in Bayeux, France, and it depicts the French Normans moving into Anglo-Saxon England. And this is a map we have from that period of time. Back then, they saw the world as rotated 90 degrees, so the top of the map is the east, and the lower left-hand corner is England and the English Channel, and then this small island in the utmost lower left is Iceland, just to situate you. So the Normans were moving from France across the Channel into England, and as this invasion took place, William, the Conqueror, wanted to record everything that was being, who owned all the land in England, and then who it was going to be transferred to. So the Doomsday Book, which is now in the National Archive in England, was one of the most, if not most comprehensive kind of catalogings of real estate and property that we have a record of. And a project at the University of Hull geocoded all of these entries in the book, and that's what you're looking at on the right. Every one of those red dots was a entry in the Doomsday Book, which said, this person owned this many acres, and so on and so on. So the idea of these books and registries were evolving until we had the emergence of a parliamentary system in Scotland, and they instituted a national register in this kind of handwritten book, and they were the first to do so and show again who owned all the land. But we're still in kind of a a system where there's a monarch, and again, it's complicated, and we probably don't have the time to delve into all that, but just wanted to put these kind of big moves on the radar for everybody here. The deed book then found its way to colonial America, and so the property was being recorded once again, and in this case, this is Plymouth, right around the corner here, where you had Governor Bradford, and the governor of Plymouth Colony was actually manually recording like who owned what and where in this new in the new world. Evolve. Now we have a newly born United States of America. We're in 1784. We have a printing press. We have all kinds of new inventions. And we have a new government that wants to take all the land that they've gained from, no longer being under the British monarchical rule, and they want to transfer it into private ownership. So they create an ordinance whereby they lay essentially what's a Cartesian grid across the entire this portion of the United States, the Northwest Territories, in order to start this land transfer process. Okay, so they thought, again, keep in mind, there was this system, these new techniques, these new technologies, there's this rationalism, this idea that we don't want to be under a king. However, you have land that was already occupied by people, existing people, and now you have new people who are just being, given the title to this land in this move, and this creates a confrontation and a conflict. And so a bill is introduced in 1830, the Indian Removal Act, in order to kind of expedite this Jeffersonian system. And it is we have the historical kind of records and documentation of how this was done. And the thing that I really wanted to share with you today was, concepts matter and philosophy matters. The idea that you bring into your process, your practice, and how you recognize and enter into dialogue with the communities and the people that you may be working with as you get into real estate is going to underpin the system you create or the approach you bring. So this phrase, mita kuye owasya, is a Dakota phrase which translates to all my relations. And what it really means is it's kind of part of a prayer wherein the Dakota people, which is who live where I'm from in Minnesota, and they see the world as a kind of cohesive and interbalanced set of relationships where people and animals and rocks and rivers and the whole cosmos are in a sense equivalent. And so the idea of imposing ownership on land is antithetical to their philosophical worldview, and that was what was coming into confrontation and conflict during these periods. So here is a depiction of a painting that was made during that time of an Ojibwa village. Also, the Ojibwa are living in Minnesota. This one happens to be in Michigan, but it shows a kind of more harmonious relationship where there's an idea that the land supersedes the importance as opposed to the individual, which was a much more Roman concept where, the individual has these, tantamount imperative rights over land. And so it's just a very different way of thinking about it, and one that privileged a lot of ecological balance and things like that. So again, these are meant to be prompts to think about. Now, the westward expansion of the United States was taking place in kind of the way I described, but also simultaneously toward the end of the 1800s, you're seeing, rapid urbanization. Um, and so new forms of property ownership are popping up. Here we have a cooperative, the first co-op in the United States, 1881. We have the invention of the condominium. I think everybody knows what a condominium is, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these things as much as the other things I've been talking about. So, but just the point of this is the first one is 1924 in Belgium. It takes almost 40 years to actually get to a built project in the United States. So the concept and the structure of the condo, it was 40 years in the making, and then it took off, right? And this was the first one in Salt Lake City, the Greystone Apartments. Likewise, you have a new kind of liberalization of capital. You have creation of more liquid property markets. And this, I love this law, the Public Law 86-779, the cigar excise tax extension of 1960. Does anybody know why I would present about a cigar excise tax? Well, the underlying, to amend the section 5701 of the Internal Revenue Code of 1954 with respect to the excise of tax upon cigars and for other purposes. Well, the other purpose turned out to be creating REITs, which became, now one of the preferred methods of global, international real estate exchange. So I think some people may be familiar with what REITs are, but a REIT is a real estate investment trust, which is a publicly listed vehicle that allows you to put properties into stock exchanges, basically. So now you can kind of trade your interest on a stock exchange, and you can see the evolution. In the 60s, it started the light blue in the United States and Australia. Now by 2021, we have many, many countries. And so what this is allowing to happen is an investor in, let's say, France or Spain or something like that can now easily, with the click of a button, invest in a security that is somewhere like in India or China or Brazil or the United States. So now we have this kind of global capital flow. I put the Google Maps and Google Earth in here just to start to suggest that, again, there's a technology and a globalization that is taking place. These infrastructures are getting built, is part of the moral of the story, that are allowing for property and the ownership of property to be just so fluidly transferred. And these innovations sometimes take time and sometimes are quite rapid. The final thing I'll share on property ownership is the LLC. The LLC statute was created in Wyoming in 1977, and I was looking for a good picture of Wyoming in 1977, and it turned out Steven Spielberg was filming Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and that's what this is. So there's a picture of the. How many people have seen that movie? Nobody has seen this movie. Well, this might be the one takeaway. What did he talk about? Well, Close Encounters of the Third Kind is a good movie to watch. It's about like aliens who come and land in the desert of Wyoming, and the people are trying to communicate with them, and they actually find a way to communicate using music. It's a pretty cool movie. It's one of Spielberg's early movies, so you might want to check it out. So, and my kind of joke here is that the LLC was a very alien, sorry for the bad pun, concept in the time. And for years, it kind of just went on and on and on. And the LLC, this allows people to be taxed in a pass-through way in a real estate partnership. And they actually created it to enable oil investors to invest in land in new ways in Wyoming. But for a long time, you see that red line at the bottom, it just kind of flatlined along. Nobody was really interested in it. This is the number of LLC filings with the IRS. And then in 1997, the IRS decided it was decided how it was going to rule on these things. And now, if you want to go out and do like starting up real estate project, you're probably going to have like an LLC, right? there's a high likelihood you're going to do it with an LLC. So that was kind of the history. I don't know how I'm doing on time. I've got 30 minutes. So we did 2,300 years in about 23 minutes. Is this okay?